Welcome to our webinar on maximizing your philanthropy. Today is Giving Tuesday, and we're really excited about this day. One of the important aspects of Ronald Blue Trust is we really believe in using generosity to really break the grip of greed and having money and money matters dominate our lives. And so today's a great day. I know people had Black Friday and had Cyber Monday. So people, normally this time of year are spending a lot of money on shopping, but this is a day where we really focus on giving. And that's what excites us. We love to have a narrative that's different than the narrative in the world here at Ronald Blue Trust. So we're going to have a pre-recorded conversation about giving. And then after that, we'll come back for some live Q&A. Now I'm going to turn it over to our panel discussion. Well, hello, Ronald Blue Trust family. We're so grateful to be here on Giving Tuesday. This is a time when the world's kind of gone mad shopping and Black Fridays and Cyber Mondays. And yet, as a firm that gets to be a bit countercultural, we want to really lean in on giving. And I'm so grateful to have this group with me today just to talk about the power of generosity and the power of giving. Carrie Mallory, who's a wealth advisor and works with many families and advises them about giving daily. Ruth Malhotra, who is our manager of strategic partnerships and works with many of the charities and not-for-profits that we're associated with. And then Aneta Chi, who is in our family office and advises families day in and day out and has great perspective around families being generous. So thank you all for joining for this segment. So Ruth, let me start with you. Thanks so much for the way you work with so many ministries and help us understand the needs of those ministries. What are some of the things you see that ministries and charities are facing today?
Yeah, interestingly, there's about 1.8 million nonprofits here in the U.S. We work with quite a few. And it's been really fascinating to get to know better both their challenges and ways that they're thriving. Giving in general has been down over the past 3 years. The COVID crisis had a lot to do with that, and many organizations are still recovering from that. Some have had to downsize. Many have found ways to creatively restructure and be more effective with less. And so we love supporting them through those transitions. I think a really encouraging development is that we're seeing much greater collaboration between these nonprofits. You're seeing more public-private partnerships. Mm-hmm. You're also seeing greater collaboration amongst the organizations themselves around shared vision and values. You're seeing people work more closely together and really coalesce around, bigger picture goals. And so that's been really encouraging to observe.
Well, it is great that people figure out sometimes in times of crisis like pandemics, et cetera, that we actually need each other. Mm-hmm. And we have a need to be generous, but also what can we do to really connect with the not-for-profits and the ministries that we deal with as individuals? What can we do that's even more than just give money?
Sure. I think, for givers, it's really important to kind of grow in your own understanding, not just of the immediate needs that these organizations are meeting, but also the ways that they're working to address the systemic problems that sort of, contribute to these crises in the first place. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the organizations, that we work with are kind of known for meeting specific needs, and that's important. But in more and more cases, they're really trying to address the long-term health and sustainability of the communities that they're pouring into. And they love it when givers come alongside them in that and seek to understand, what's the bigger picture? What's your vision for this community 5 years from now, 10 years from now? What do you hope to accomplish? How are you attacking some of these challenges at the root? And how can we be a part of systemic change? When you do that, you're more connected to the organization's efforts as a whole. It really means a lot to them, and I think it gives you greater purpose in your giving as well.
What do you think nonprofits and charities want their givers to know?
Sure. I think just like we talk a lot about stewardship here at our firm for individuals, the ministries and nonprofits are working really hard to stretch every dollar that comes in. They really take stewardship so seriously, and they've put systems and structures in place that help ensure that your money will have multiplied impact. When you give to an organization, you're giving to really concentric circles of influence. I think that's one thing that they really want givers to understand and be excited about. Another thing I think is, the importance of year over year giving and how that helps these organizations with their planning.
How do you mean?
So, many of these organizations really want to focus on, like we talked about, the longer term strategic efforts. And it's hard for them to do that if they can't plan several years out.
So knowing they can rely on you.
Exactly. Knowing they can rely on you for a longer period of time.
Oh, that's great.
A year over year commitment that you're invested in them for a longer season, I think helps them really pursue their goals and vision in a more strategic way rather than, putting out specific fires. We all love giving to in the moment, needs, and there are so many crises that hit both globally and locally, and it's important when those things happen to ask God, what can you do through me, and to be open-handed with your resources in that moment. I think longer term for these organizations, to help their planning, it's important to consider, how can I make a long-term commitment to a cause that I believe in and commit to walking alongside the work that they're doing over a period of time.
Love that. Thanks. So, Nada, you work with families all the time. And one thing, that I've noticed is kind of if somebody's generous when they have $100, they'll be generous if they have $100 million. And if they're not generous when they have $100, chances are they may not be that generous if they have $100 million. You work with substantially wealthy families, but also there's a place for everybody to think through and plan and draw a finish line. Can you talk about how you do that with clients?
Yeah, I'm happy that you mentioned, regardless of where you are, there's always a place for generosity, because there is that myth that you have to have so much excess before you can give. But I'm reminded of the story of the widow and the widow's mite that she gave in scripture. And, Jesus commended her for giving from the little that she had. So, one of the things we just say is be intentional about your giving. And Ronald Blue has always focused on, detailed cash flow planning to kind of help clients have clarity on where they're spending, because we make time for what's important to us, and somehow with our finances, if we're not intentional about directing our finances to where we want it to go, we find that our funds are going to different things and we really don't know where. And so part of what we do with our cash flow planning is show our clients where their spending is and how it aligns with their goals, and it's a no judgment zone. We're always going to encourage clients to have generosity as a priority part of their spending rather than an afterthought. But when we put that alongside their goals, they can reset or readjust. And then beyond just the initial cash flow plan where you're looking at how you're spending right now, we get to sit back and dream a little and say, okay, once you've taken care of your current needs, your future needs, your aspirational goals, what are you going to do with the excess? And that's what we call your financial finish line. And this is where, I say, generosity just takes on a whole new meaning. I'm privileged to work in our family office where I do have clients who have reached that financial finish line. And so when they're looking at generosity, it's beyond just, making donations or meeting needs, which are important, but they're really looking to make impact. And so, it goes just beyond just writing a check, but they're thinking about how can they engage? How can they get their next generation involved in systemic change in one way or the other. So it's exciting to work at a place like Ronald Blue where we push the envelope. We're a wealth management firm, but yet we're out there encouraging our clients to give. But I say, somehow we've been doing this for 40 years. this business plan seems to work, and
Yeah.
it's not a reason, generosity is not a reason for clients getting broke. So happy to be supporting them in that way.
It's amazing to see hundreds of millions of dollars go out of the firm every year in generosity, and yet we grow every year. It's like, okay, no fear about clients giving. In fact, actually encouraging them to draw the finish line and give more. I think every client's got a question when they first meet us is, am I going to be okay? Mm-hmm. And drawing that finish line helps them see, yes, financially you're going to be okay. And then they start to think about, are other people okay? Right? And that's the leap that we love to see our clients take.
Exactly.
There's some practicalities to giving. And so thinking about options for them, we use donor advised funds a great deal. I read a book 30 years ago called The Agile Servant, and it was all about donor advised funds. So fascinating. Probably not to everybody here, but to me it was at the time. How do you advise around using, what is a donor advised fund, and how can people use one?
Great question. So donor advised fund simply is an account that's set up to receive assets that have been specifically earmarked for charitable giving to qualified charities. These accounts are usually held by what's called a sponsoring organization that's also a qualified 501c3. So the beauty of how all of this works is that when you make a donation or contribution to that account, you immediately receive a charitable deduction. And then you have the flexibility of dispersing the assets from this account to charities, your favorite charities, over time at whatever time frame fits your bill. So it gives you a lot of flexibility in that regard. But even beyond that, from a tax perspective, you see that there's a multiplier effect when you are able to use what we call highly appreciated assets. Mm-hmm. So a donor advised fund is able to receive cash and also assets like publicly available stock or real estate, collectibles, you name it. But to give you an example, so you were one of those who happened to jump on Amazon stock way before it became a household name. So, 20 some years ago, you're now looking at a stock that has appreciated 100x. And then you want to use that for your charitable giving. Well, your option is to sell the stock, pay Uncle Sam capital gains tax, and then give to charity from the leftover. Or you can donate that same stock into a donor advised fund. The full value of this appreciated stock is now available to meet all the needs that the charity has, and then you avoid paying capital gains tax. So that's where you can really see the multiplier effect, and it's a win-win for all of our parties. And as you mentioned, we've always been leveraging donor advised funds for a very long time, but it's even more exciting that we now have an offering here.
That's true.
A donor advised fund called Blue Give. So with our partnership with Give Claire Foundation, we're now able to actually have clients use Blue Give in a low-cost, tax-efficient manner. There's no account minimum, so you don't have to have $1 million in the donor advised funds. You can have zero at one point or even more at a different point. So we've been able to just glean from all the feedback that we've gotten by using other publicly available donor advised funds to be able to advise our clients and set up this particular Blue Give to keep it low cost with no account minimums. And also you have access to over 1.5 million charities that you're able to give to. And to the extent that there's a charity that you love that's not listed, you're also able to make a request, and that's added onto the list. So it's definitely one of the really exciting offerings that we've added to our toolbox.
I love that. Blue Give is super fun. We're going to, so we set aside God money every year. And then, as you move towards the end of the year too, if you haven't given it all out or exceeded what Rhonda and I decided we're going to give, we'll put it in the donor advised fund. And it's super easy too to have it in a donor advised fund where you advise where the funds go, and then it's kind of like we only have tax reporting in one place to the donor advised fund. I don't have to worry about collecting a bunch of receipts from a bunch of different charities. And then there's multi-generational aspects. So the way that we're using it and the way we're going to get to use it at Christmas, which is going to be fantastic, is giving to our children. so that they can give to causes that they care about. And I think we'll probably do something for our 6-year-old granddaughter this year as well, so we can start to get, or she would tell me 6 3/4 years old, to get her started on a journey of generosity.
I really love that you mentioned that, because that's one of the unique things that we've built into Blue Give, is that householding account, where you're able to fund an account for the younger generation and get them into the habit of giving and dispersing this asset. So
It's
yeah.
so great. It's so great. We could go on and talk about this forever, but Carrie, I want to shift over to you for a minute. You've worked with so many clients and seen so many situations where people have been generous. Could you share some stories for us about that?
I'd love to, because it is a joy, as we know, helping clients be more generous. It's hard. It's hard to let go of the things you've worked hard for, right? And it's really fun to help clients have more clarity and ultimately confidence, so they can have that peace to give generously. So I'll share a couple of stories with you that really excite me when I think about being able to have an impact in that way. So I was speaking a few years ago at a ministry event, and several of our clients were there. And I was challenging the group. First, I was praising them and sort of celebrating that we've been trained. If we've been trained to be generous, we typically are trained to give out of our income. And people like to think, I'm going to give a dollar amount or percentage out of my income, 3%, 5%, 10%, 15% or more out of my income. And so we were celebrating that. Like, that's a great way. It's an easy way to think about it. Hey, I made $1,000. I'm going to give 100 of that right now, right? That's how I train my kids to think, right? Give out of that increase, or out of that income that you have. But then I challenged the group to think bigger than that, because if you believe that God owns it all, not only does he own your income, right? You want to give generously out of that, but could you give out of your increase? Because think about it. This is the challenge I put before the group. Has your investment account grown this year? Has your company valuation grown? Has your real estate that you own, the commercial real estate you own, has that grown in value? If it has, could you consider giving of that increase? And the exciting thing is, if you really want to take your giving to the next level, think about giving out of your income and your increase.
I like that.
You just see it explode, right? Well, one of the families that was there, a few days later, I got a phone call, and they said, "Hey, Carrie, how much is our investment account up this year?" And I said, "It's up $120,000. And they said, "Okay, thank you very much." I'd forgotten, that this was a conversation that happened. I wasn't sure where it was going to go. They called me a couple of days later and said, "We've prayed about this, and we'd like to give $100,000 of our gains away."
Wow.
That's fun,
Yeah.
right? To be part of helping them have the confidence to be able to do that. They had a finish line that we helped them identify. So we'd like to give away almost all of the gains this year.
Wow.
Very exciting. And that's exciting because they were able to give appreciated assets, and in that case, save on the taxes, as Anita explained earlier. We also do some more complicated giving. Anita mentioned that in a donor-advised fund, you can give cash, you can give appreciated assets, you can also give businesses or part of your business, part of real estate. And I am working currently with a family who has, we've helped them identify what their finish line is. And they've determined that they've been selling various real estate that they've kind of accumulated over decades. They've begun to sell it now. It's been a great market over the last 2 years to be selling real estate. Well, they reached a point at which they said, we have enough. We have enough to accomplish all of our goals and objectives for the rest of our lives and our family's life. Why don't we give away the next property that we're going to sell completely, okay? And we use this, that's a more complicated gift. You're not just giving cash or stock or bonds. You're giving a piece of operating real estate. So what we did was, similar to your example, Anita, they have two choices. They could sell the real estate, then take the proceeds, pay taxes on a lot of that, right, and then give it away. Or we could give that complex asset into a donor-advised fund. So we gave the real estate prior to the sale, which meant that they ended up giving it a much bigger amount away because they didn't have to pay all of those taxes. And all of that money went into their donor-advised fund, and they were able to give from that. That's an exciting opportunity for them. They'd much rather be giving it to their favorite charities than to Uncle Sam.
Absolutely. Those are your choices. Forced philanthropy or voluntary philanthropy. Forced philanthropy is taxation, and voluntary philanthropy is what you just described, which seems to make you really happy, which is strange because as an advisor, Carrie, when money moves out of your account, that could be less money for you when you're advising on the funds and fewer funds for you to advise over. But that's the part I love, is the fact that we are countercultural. We don't believe the same things that we're kind of trained to believe, the things that Jesus taught us to believe around whether it's loving enemies or giving generously. And the idea that God owns it all that you mentioned, it's so much more of kind of a peaceful way to go through life than just worrying about what's in it for me.
Yeah, and my responsibility as coming alongside families on their journey is to help them identify how they can be more generous, but not in a way that feels compulsive or something, but allowing them to have more confidence and ultimately peace to then open up their hands. And our job is to just help them accomplish their goals. And if their goals are to give away the funds that we have, the treasure that they've saved up, hey, I'm responsible for helping you achieve your goals, and that's an honor to do.
That's great. That's great.
And I love what we've talked about today. It's like, just give from where you are. There's this idea that you have to be a millionaire before you can give, and that's not true. If you just learn to live with an open hand, knowing that God will be the ultimate provider and that you're a conduit for anything that he blesses you with. So there's this joy and unspeakable freedom that just comes from you being a river that just continues to replenish others versus just being a landfill where everything just ends.
I love that. That's great closing comments. That's a mic drop right there. But
Be the river, not the landfill.
be the river, not the landfill. Ruth, what would you say in closing?
Yeah, I can't share sophisticated financial advice like the rest of y'all, but I can share one anecdote that touched my heart recently. I was talking to someone who volunteers for a local nonprofit that does ministry among the refugee community here in Atlanta. And this volunteer was describing an interaction she had with one of the families they serve. She was talking to the mother of that family, and she said, "So, do y'all have plans to celebrate Christmas?" And the woman just kind of looked at her puzzled, like they never celebrated Christmas before. And she just looked at her and said, "You are our Christmas." And that really struck me. And I would just encourage everyone listening, think about how you can be the Christmas for someone this season, and also how you can support these amazing organizations and nonprofits that are on the front lines serving the least of these among us.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Ruth, for that reminder. Carrie, how about you?
I'd like to challenge our listeners to give of their income, but also to give of their increase. I think that's when you're really going to feel the power of unlocking your generosity, is when you can give out of both of those channels and just watch the blessings come back to you.
Right. Thanks so much, Carrie. Thanks for that. Well, we're so grateful to have this group, to have a conversation about giving. So Giving Tuesday, give generously. Really think about the people that you can help and the causes that you can help, and think about what you can do to open up your heart and open up your wallet and give. And not just give just the money. Yes, the money's very important. Don't get that wrong. But it's also given of yourself, ways that you can engage with the charities and the causes that you can care about. Nothing replaces that interaction, that human interaction of being with people and seeing lives changed because God changed your life, and in return, you were a generous person. There's a great proverb that says that a generous person will prosper, and a person that refreshes others will themselves be refreshed. So give this Tuesday, today, and be refreshed. Thank you. So now we're going to take some questions and go to a little bit of Q&A. So a couple of questions have come in. Let me see. Why should I use a DAF? What would you recommend? Well, we talked a little bit about it in the sharing earlier. DAF is a donor advised fund. And that's part of that's a fund at a community foundation, which gets better tax breaks by a greater percentage of adjusted gross income by giving to a public charity, a community foundation. And you can think of that as a holding tank, that donor advised fund that you can give into, and then you can give to multiple charities. And as was expressed in the video a little bit, you know, you just get, you don't have to worry about collecting a bunch of receipts everywhere. You get one statement every year for your giving, makes it easier during tax time. And also the reason it's called a donor advised fund is because once you give it, you don't actually own the assets anymore, but the charity does, but you're advising them on where to send it. So it's a really easy process. There's some great ones out there that we partner with. And we mentioned Blue Give, but there's also NCF, and there are a lot of other great foundations and community foundations and places where you can open a donor advised fund. Let's see, the next question. Do I have to be a client of RBT in order to open a Blue Give account? Actually, yes. One of the things that's you can become a client by opening a Blue Give account. So you don't have to be a client to open a Blue Give account, but you can become a client by opening one because Blue Give is specifically for advisors. And it's a great tool and a great platform for you to be able to interact with charities and also have your advisor working with you on that. One of the great aspects that we talked about is the multi-generational part of Blue Give. So yes, when you open a Blue Give account, you'll be assigned an advisor. And I think that's one of the real benefits of having Blue Give is also having an advisor come along with it. How simple is the process of opening an account? Most donor advised funds are pretty easy to open. You can open online, you can open fairly quickly. So I know with Blue Give, you can open it fairly quickly and fund it easily. And other donor advised funds too, pretty easy to go online and open an account. Some charities will require that you fill out a form and send it in as well to open a donor advised fund. So there's many of them out there. Some of them will be easier than others. Let's see. Yeah, one more question, a Blue Give question again, compared to other DAFs. So how does Blue Give compare to other donor advised funds? Well, what we really tried to do with Blue Give is to provide a great technology platform that supports your giving and is able to be very flexible for you and able to be easy to interact with and also to build in those family interactions. So I think probably the things, you know, it's pretty comparably priced to Fidelity and Vanguard and other donor advised funds. But I think the technology interface is great, especially the multi-generational part. And then having an advisor to go on the journey with you is a great part of having a Blue Give account as well. But it isn't about just Blue Give, it's about Giving Tuesday and really making sure that you take this day, go ahead, get crazy, be countercultural, give more, whatever you just thought of, add a zero to it, do more and be generous. That generosity will unlock amazing things in your heart and in your family and with the people that you're giving to. So thank you for joining us for this webinar. We hope we can serve you and celebrate Giving Tuesday by giving generously. Thanks.